Yo Summoners, welcome back to another ProGuides Wild Rift video. My name is Nathaning, and for today, we're going to be looking at the 10 most common mistakes that lose games. To get you the best information possible, we work together with Challenger Analyst Coach, so everything that you're going to be hearing here is Challenger certified. So if you're tired of giving away an already won game and you just want to make sure that you win most of your games, you simply have to stay and listen. Very first up on the list, we have the everlasting issue of dragons. Dragons itself has very little value early on and are mostly just adding insult to injury. Killing them and getting their buffs is just another way of acquiring stats. The most usual way that you're familiar with this is buying stats with gold or getting them via leveling up. Just think of an early mountain dragon. That bonus shield is not going to be too much in terms of gold early on. A ruby crystal is 500 gold for 150 HP. A mountain dragon, on the other hand, is about 6% max HP shield that refreshes after a certain period of time. Consequently, when your character has 1000 HP, you're going to be ending up with a 60 HP shield. That is literally only a third of a ruby's crystal's value. Obviously, those stats are getting better the longer the game goes on, but they are, as you see, not worth losing a lead for. Technically speaking, you can calculate gold values for each dragon depending on the current game time and state. Some compositions need those dragons and others are fine giving them away. Especially when your team is early game focused, collecting as many resources as possible is important to win your game. Playing against a heavily scaling composition that also gets all the dragons while safely farming up is literally a death sentence. Dragons are good, but they are not worth losing a game for. Before even thinking about taking one, you just have to make sure that you're looking at all the required bits of information. Where are your teammates and where are your enemies? Is vision already established or is the area around the dragon pitch black? In addition to that, what was happening prior to the dragon spawn? Was there some kind of a skirmish and your team was forced to blow a lot of important cooldowns to get a meaningless kill? Well, if so, you'll most likely have to forfeit the dragon. However, the game doesn't end from that position. Look at the map, collect camps, waves, and acquire vision on the other side of the map. The key takeaway here is, don't give the enemy anything for free. Always try to trade up for something. If you don't do that, they'll pull ahead and you won't be able to catch up ever again. Trust me, losing a dragon will not cause you to lose your game unless you and your entire team chooses to consistently try and fight for dragons when you cannot dream of contesting it. Before we continue with today's video, make sure you check out our Discord in the description down below. Regular giveaways and community events await you, so what are you waiting for? Plus, you could hit up me or Kangas, or about anybody else. We would love to chat with you. Another too common mistake is disrespecting the fog of war. Depending on what champion you're playing, it's very deadly to face check unwarded territory. This gets even worse when the enemy team has an assassin on their team, and since assassin champs are still very popular, that won't be a rare occurrence. Did you play against an assassin recently? And if so, what did you do once you left the lane? The worst mistake that you could do is blindly follow him into the fog of war. The reason is as simple as it is deadly. He might wait in the bush and kill you. Think about it. What keeps you safe from an assassin? In lane, it's usually the distance between you and him, and later on, items and summoner spells will play a huge role as well. However, face checking an assassin is a really bad idea at all times unless you're fed enough to deal with them. But here's a rule of thumb for dealing with the fog of war. Don't ever walk into it if you're unable to deal with a champion that could be hiding there. Look at your team's composition and let the tankier members go first. Don't put yourself at risk for no reason. Especially as the game goes into the later stages, this can be a very fast and painful game-changing mistake. Once you're out of position in an area that you better not be in, you can lose the game for you and your team. As a result, you have to be very aware of what's happening around you and what the enemy champions could do to you. Now let's take a quick break for our question of the day. In the last games that you played, what was the most painful mistake that you made? Let us know in the comments down below. I'm really looking forward to this one. While you're trying to win your games, you probably come across this issue plenty of times, because I know I do this all the time. And the problem is greed. You want more minions, maybe another tower plate, or even a jungle camp. But at what cost, and is it even relevant for you to get those? I mean, if you already have your completed item in terms of gold, why would you save for another 200 gold that won't change anything for that specific purchase? By trying to get another wave or a jungle camp, you're actively delaying your power spike. Unless there is a specific reason for you to stay on the map, you should always be aware of the money in the bank and the money required to build your items of choice. So, doing so will allow you to influence the map in a better manner as you are consciously playing around your strengths. Another deadly facet of greed is overchasing the enemy. Think about it, do you really need the kill or can you just take the wave and recall for your item spike? It's very similar to the other presented concepts, but I've seen it happen too many times. Don't let your emotions take over and try to maintain a calm mind. Directly connected to this issue of greed is recalling in a broader sense. In this case, it's about your position and the relative game state. The first one is the obvious one. Where are you recalling, and is it safe enough to do so? On that note, after you killed your enemy laner and crashed the wave into his tower, is it really necessary to run all the way back to your tower and recall when you have enough vision to channel it right away? Keep in mind that anytime you spend running around without accomplishing anything, it is a time frame the enemy can use. Try to be efficient with your recalls and don't waste too much time. The less obvious one is about recalls and the relative game state. For that, we have to take a look at the map. What objective is spawning soon or is available already? Let's say the dragon is respawning in 40 seconds and we have enough gold to purchase an item that is definitely going to influence the fight around the dragon. Delaying your recall here will make things harder. You'll have less time to build up vision with your team and less time to find a good position to fight in. Consequently, such a fight is already negatively skewed and will be harder to win. But what about the uncontestable dragon on which you have a ward that tells you that all 5 enemies are on it? Why would you try to contest it when you're just about to push your waves, hit the tower, or take the enemy jungle camps? You already have all the information needed to do so, and recalling would just be a terrible play in this scenario. Facing assassins is not a nice thing as a carry. We all know that they hurt a lot and deal their damage almost instantly. To mitigate that threat, we have to build proper items and save us from that existence. Appropriate items that would come to mind would probably be Zanya's and into heavy AP assassins. Even committing 2 item slots for survival isn't such a bad idea. You're not doing damage if you're dead, so if you're seeing an ADC with Malma Mortius and Spare Visage, don't be surprised as you're probably facing something like an Akali or an Evelynn. Even with the buff to Ma and the introduction of adaptive carapace, those champions still deal quite a lot of damage, and yeah, survival is the most important thing for an ADC, especially in the later stages of the game. Something that is still a foreign concept even for some pro players in the League of Legends PC is playing around power spikes. Before contesting an objective, you can quickly open up the scoreboard to check out the enemy's items. Did they already complete their first core item, or maybe even more? If so, how strong are you in comparison? Let's say that you're half an item versus 1 full item. What are your chances of winning? From my perspective, they are very low, unless you find an opportune moment that you can capitalize on. But let's say that you're playing against a Riven and she has a Sheen and a longsword in her inventory while you just have a longsword. What do you think will happen if a champion that primarily weaves in spells and auto attacks engages on you with such an item advantage that doesn't even appear to be too big? You're gonna get crushed. Every Sheen proc is basically another auto attack added to her damage, and she can at least give you 2 of those procs when fast comboing. In some scenarios, it might be even worth it for her to space out her spells to get more value out of Sheen, but trust me, she hurts almost more than my last relationship ending. Generally, ask yourself, what makes you, your teammates, and the enemy team's champion spike? Which items are their most important items in terms of core functionality, and therefore adjust the fights that you want to take? The next mistake is probably the most common amongst them all, letting tilts influence the way that you're playing. In a previous segment, we talked about the value of dragons and that they aren't game deciding. However, a lot of players still think that losing a dragon is equal to losing the game on the spot, which leads them to instantly surrender the game mentally and also physically. This mental disadvantage is going to impact your gameplay for sure, and trust me, it'll be impacted severely. Another nice example of letting frustration take over is when you're back to calling jungle diff once again. Being successfully ganked isn't always due to the enemy jungler's superiority over your jungler, but also because you aren't paying attention. Jungle pathing is mostly telegraphed and can be spotted out with an early ward or simply looking at lanes. Every jungler has an optimal path that he usually wants to follow unless he has reasons to do something else. With that in mind, laning, wave control, trading, and recalls need to be adjusted. Mindlessly fighting an enemy because you want to is not gonna cut it, and surely it's not jungle difference. It's just you wanting to do something that you cannot. And what happens afterwards is something that we've all seen too many times. Repeating the same behavior over and over again without learning from our mistakes. And that is madness, according to Einstein. Watch your own replays, look at the typical jungle pathing, and learn to incorporate those ideas into your laning phase. Personally for me, what helps me to not tilt is after losing a lot of games, I just take a break. I get some boba, I work out, I go for a walk. Boba generally helps the most, or watching anime. Similar to that is being too cocky or passive in general. A lot of players feel intimidated or superior depending on what elo they're facing. However, they completely disregard that the player itself matters less when you know the limits of a champion. Let's pretend that you're contesting the first wave against the Riven. With that, you're asking to lose the lane. If the Riven is good, you're gonna lose 70% of your HP, or worst case, you might just die. After that, she has the ability to fast push the second wave as well, recall, and then buy a Sheen. Once that happens, you won't come back unless she makes a mistake, or unless you get a jungle gank, but you know, jungle diff. Something that is equally as dangerous as the prior point is fighting in disadvantageous terrain against specific champions. In this scenario, picture yourself versing a Seraphine and walking through a tight corridor. What do you think is about to happen? You'll get absolutely obliterated by her ultimate, third and first ability. She alone, as she is primarily itemizing damage items, can nearly destroy your entire team by herself. Be mindful of how you move and if your team is better off clustering or splitting apart when facing such champions. Ideally, you'd have a Braum that walks in first and is fast enough to react into blocking the spell if you choose that way of approach. Otherwise, look for another way, or just drop the objective completely, as walking into it will spell your imminent doom, and you'll probably lose the objective anyway. The last common mistake is another one that happens quite frequently: bad macro decisions. Where are we going? How are we supposed to close the game, and what is our team comp's goal? Does your team consist of primarily split-pushing champions? Then, don't try to hard-force teamfights. You gotta find your win con. Is your team a combination of insane teamfight-oriented champions? What about deathballing down mid? Why would you want a Wukong, Seraphine, Jinx, Ziggs, and Garen comp to play on many lanes at once? On the flip side, why would you force a Fiora and a Kha'Zix into dragged-out teamfighting compared to splitting and shadowing? Every champion has a desired mode that they're played in, and that needs to be thought of. Adjusting the items for their purpose, looking for different plays, and overall rotating with purpose help out tremendously. With that, we're ending today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you enjoyed our videos, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. This way you'll never miss out on anything Wild Rift ever again. Anyway, my name is Nathan Ng. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.